Hello there, Internet, and if it sounds like we're in different rooms or something, it's because we are.
Yeah, we're exactly 220 miles away.
Exactly.
Exactly. Tape measure and all. I checked.
Okay, yeah, well, Alex is deep, deep down south. Fear he may be beyond reach. And I'm still up here in Lafayette, Indiana. So we saw this movie, different multiplexes,
Yes, we did.
and
Different
we have
environments.
no idea how the other person feels.
Oh, so this is going to be sort of like a game then.
Well, yeah, it's kind of. I kind of feel like it's that kind of movie. X-Men 7, aka Days of Future Past. I think it has a lot of things that might turn some people off and other elements that really appeal to you if you happen to be a pretty hardcore geek. Yeah, there are a lot of customers that came up to the counter, as always, asking. I work at the East Side 9, in case you didn't know. And they're asked what they'd rather see, Godzilla or X-Men, and those are two pretty geeky options, for your casual moviegoer. And I always told them Godzilla, like not even on the strength of the movie itself, just you know what you're getting into with Godzilla.
Yeah, it has more of a
with
general
X-Men,
appeal.
right? With X-Men is just so complicated. It's so unwieldy by this point in its lifespan, the franchise. Think about this, Alex. It's been going since 2000 without so much as a cast change. They've had the Star Trek style reboot, sort of, but they still haven't gotten rid of the old guard. You have Wolverine still around. He's still the same guy. Professor X, Magneto, Kitty Pryde, who has a much more expanded role. She was kind of, in X3, she was the girl who could run through walls, played by, Ellen Page, yeah. And I guess she's kind of more pivotal to the plot in this one because I had no idea, but she can also send your consciousness back in time, which might seem kind of specific because it is.
Yeah, I mean, this movie does have a very strong geek appeal, but I also think because this movie franchise has been sort of enduring, it's been so long, that I think even casual moviegoers are somewhat familiar with at least a few of the characters.
Oh yeah, well we all know Magneto can bend metal. We all know that Professor X is a telepath and Wolverine's got the claws. I think that's about as far as the knowledge, like the basic knowledge of X-Men goes. I didn't know who some of these mutants were.
But I think they were smart with this movie. There was a lot of exposition at first, and I think that was a good thing because, again, this is a very, I don't want to say convoluted, but it's a very back and forth complex plot.
Literally back and forth in time. Yeah, so we have your typical superhero movie exposition narration provided by Patrick Stewart's lovely tones, which plays over the opening monologue of a devastated planet Earth where humans are enslaved by Skynet. I'm sorry, Sentinels.
Now, did they say what year it was?
2000 more. I don't know. The not too distant future.
Because
of the end of Wolverine.
And that was current time, correct?
Yeah, the end of the last Wolverine movie, which was last year. We've got the Stinger, where Magneto shows up, starts like messing with some shit, and apparently he got his powers back. I mean, we're gonna get pretty geeky right now, viewers or listeners, I suppose. You might want to, I don't know, just take a quick trip to Wikipedia if you want to figure it out for yourself. But the end of X3. Half of the villains got themselves neutered, basically. They had their powers taken. Magneto got his back mysteriously. Professor X got a new body? And
yeah, I guess.
Wolverine lost his adamantium to the Silver Samurai. Remember that at the end of the Wolverine when he had his adamantium claws cut off?
Yes, he did.
So he had to grow some bone ones, but apparently he got the adamantium back in the meantime. Oh, and also there was an apocalyptic war with robots. This all happens off screen in between movies. So that's a lot. It's a lot to catch up on, like right off the bat. But the movie doesn't even care. It does not even care to tell you what happened to the characters. Basically, just what happened to Earth. And now there's only like 12 mutants left, maybe, because the Sentinels, the Killbots, they are
wiping them out.
Exactly as their name entails. Like, they just are death. They're just like death incarnate. Really, there's no way to beat them because kind of like that Terminator in T2, They can just adapt to whatever it is you're throwing at them.
Also, they are able to take on some of the mutants' powers, or also like whatever the opposite is. Like in the beginning battle, one of the Sentinels was able to like attain ice powers to defeat the fire flaming torch guy, and then with an opposite fight, the Sentinel developed fire powers to beat the ice guy. I don't know who that was either.
Yeah, I don't really remember their names. They were characters though. They were pretty important characters in the first three films, but they're not in this movie. The future with all those venerable actors. You have Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen. They are basically just a framing device for the main story, which takes place back in the 70s, because Kitty Pryde can apparently send Wolverine's consciousness back in time to try and avert this one pivotal moment where I guess public opinion turns against mutants.
Yeah, that's
And
essentially
the Sentinels are developed. Yeah, so that's the plot in a nutshell. You have a bizarre situation where apparently these Sentinels were in production during the first 3 or 4 movies, and you never heard a peep out of them. So I'm not really sure what the deal. It's kind of like a non-canon. It's like, well, what if this had happened?
Yeah,
What if there was a global war?
yeah, I was sort of thrown off by that. Like, so I know these things are like super powerful beings or robots. Why weren't they ever used in the other movies? Like, they're just, hidden, and now there's just this unbeatable force. But I will say this, I did like that Wolverine went in the past, because, of course, Wolverine is extremely frank and also impatient. So when he shows up in the past in his own body, if that makes any sense, he immediately just like
It
lays it
doesn't.
out like, I'm from the future, you sent me, let's go, we gotta stop Mystique. And I did kind of like that all the characters just went like, okay, alright. Because you think about it, if anyone else went back, one would be sort of unbelievable, as well as, at least for me, I would think, oh, I don't know how I go about saying that, Like, yeah, I'm sort of here, but my body's in
Yeah,
the future
Wolverine.
too.
Wolverine doesn't really give a shit. It's kind of interesting the way these actors, the new generation basically. So Michael Fassbender plays Magneto, and then James McAvoy, is that his name?
Yep.
He plays Professor X, and they are really the two important, most prominent characters. Of course, there's also Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique, but she's kind of, I don't know, she's not really that interesting to me. Do you think she's interesting?
In this one, not really.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
I
it's
think,
just Jennifer Lawrence.
but I think one big not problem, but just something to point out is I think the villains in this movie are, unlike other comic book movies, these villains aren't really, they don't have a lot of depth, really. It's just
What
kind of like
villains? What villains? Are there any villains?
Tyrion Lannister plays the short, mustache twirling.
Yeah, Peter
Steve
Dinklage. Well, he doesn't really twirl his mustache. He's just really reserved in this movie. I kind of expected something else out of him, but he just kind of delivers his lines. I don't know. He's a cool choice, I guess, of casting. Because I mean, I appreciated that they didn't make a single reference to his stature. It's just like, oh, he just happens to be a little person. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But apart from that, he's just kind of window dressing.
And then Mystique's sort of a villain because they're trying to stop her from causing a certain event.
But that's the interesting thing about this
it's-
movie, Alex. I thought everyone acted in their own self-interest. Like they didn't give a shit about what the future implications of their actions might be, because I don't think half of them even believe Wolverine. It's just like, well, whatever. Even Professor X says like, all right, I'll help you, but not because you are babbling about the future, just because I want to stop my. I guess she's his adopted sister. So
Yeah.
who remembered that? Not me.
Well, it was in X-Men Origins, and they did kind of show the...
You mean
Flashback.
X-Men First Class?
Oh,
Yeah,
X-Men
see, it's
First
pretty
Class, my bad.
confusing. Yeah, no, I forgive you, really. There were so many head-scratching moments where I was like, wait, who, where, why?
But I did
But-
like this when it came to, like, say, the villains aren't that strong. I think it's because the major conflict throughout this is all internal, say for Magneto, say for Professor X, sort of Mystique, or it's
Mhm.
between those three kind of feuding. Because at first, and you can even see it in the poster that I'm looking at right now, Wolverine is like the biggest guy in the poster. You think like, oh, this surrounds him, but he doesn't change at all. He's really just
No, I think he's
observing
pretty much
this.
come to the place he wants to be. I mean, we had that whole movie. We've had like 5 movies devoted to Wolverine. He had
Oh,
the first 3 were Wolverine centered, and then his
yeah.
own spin-off, and then his own other spin-off. So I think he's had his day, you know.
Oh, understandably, but like something I was asking myself driving back from this movie, I'm like, so wait, who was the main character in this? And at first it
Good
is
question.
Wolverine. It is at first it's Wolverine, but then it transitions to Professor X and Magneto, and really the resolve surrounds them as well.
And I was pretty fascinated by the change, all those changes in perspective, because at this point, I kind of really feel like this is the first true comic book movie, because you have all these established characters staying true to their established personalities, and this bizarre, convoluted plot, and a lot of really sweet action. I was a huge fan of the action scenes. They were really well made. It's kind of like a super synergy type thing when you have the all these X-Men movies do it, but kind of the same thing in the Avengers, where you have people their powers playing off each other, and that I don't know, that has always appealed to me, because you have well, in the future there's Portal Girl, right? She's the girl from Portal. She just makes yeah, I know, rifts in space time and can send things through them, and then you have that combined with Colossus, combined with Storm, combined with New Guy. I'm not really sure what his deal was.
By the way, I have to point out, it was kind of funny to see Halle Berry in this because I think the 95% of this film that she's in, it's just her staring up.
Yeah, no, it was pretty great. She didn't say, she had like 2 lines maybe.
She deserves that
Oh yeah, no,
screen time.
she's given this franchise the cold shoulder, I think.
Yeah, I mean, she did say a few times in interviews, like, I can't believe I've been reduced to a comic book character. And it's interesting now that there are so many actors that want to be comic book characters.
Oh yeah, you've got these Oscar-winning people. I'm not sure if Patrick Stewart's won an Oscar, but who cares? You know, he's highly esteemed. You've got
Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen. Oh yeah, Fassbender's been nominated. Jennifer Lawrence has won. So yeah, these well, no, Hugh Jackman. Did Hugh Jackman win? It doesn't really matter. You know, they're all great.
Too.
Yeah, they're all great actors. And there's so many moving pieces in this movie. You don't really get a lot of time to spend with any of them, individually. But you know, it's still pretty enjoyable.
But I think the time you do spend with them, I think there are some really good character moments in this. Probably my favorite scene from this is there's a point where they're flying on a plane going to Paris, and Magneto and Professor X are having an argument, and Magneto just stands up and starts yelling this monologue, and he's crushing the plane from his magnetic powers.
Yeah, that's always been the thing with new Magneto. He doesn't really have much of a hold when he's not focusing, because he's prone to such flights of rage. And that kind of comes through in a couple scenes whenever he's under duress, like just the metal everywhere starts messing up. But it's kind of interesting. Let's talk about the way that the plot has to use these characters, and some of them are, let's be honest, they're pretty OP. They're a little overpowered. Quicksilver's a new guy.
Right.
He is just so good. You know, before you even blink, he can have a snack. When you have someone who's just that fast, what can you do to them? Like how
he
do
was
you
also used as just a plot device, really.
Of course he was, yeah, but when it's kind of a plot hole to think like, well, why'd they just send Quicksilver away after his really useful contribution? That's a bit of a spoiler that they just kind of, you know, he goes off and does his own thing. They have to explain that, well, because that's just him. He's kind of a douche, you know. He's not too. He isn't really interested in saving the world. He just kind of wants to steal things.
Now,
or Magneto. Who cares? Did you care?
The only thing I wanted to point out, it looked kind of goofy. I felt like everyone else sort of had this fit in the universe. I don't know. I just thought his like.
What'd you think of Jennifer Lawrence's hair, Alex?
You mean like when she's actually Mystique, or?
No, I'm being facetious. Like, okay. Who gives a damn?
Alright, I was just wondering, man. I mean, if we're gonna geek out on this movie, we might as well we could hit the details as well. But go ahead with Magneto.
Honestly, no, he was probably the most enjoyable character, and he only has a couple scenes, but I hope we see more of that guy. What's interesting is that he'll be in the Avengers, played by boring face from Godzilla, Kick-Ass. He'll be played by Kick-Ass in the Avengers movie.
Yeah.
I don't think they can upstage this version of Quicksilver, and I really, how would they do
I
it?
thought
Because
this Quicksilver would have fit the Marvel movie better because he was comedic relief.
Oh
Right?
yeah, definitely, because it's kind of surprisingly a heavy movie for as much comic book ridiculousness they throw at you. There are a lot of emotions conveyed by incredible actors, so it juggles those balls pretty well, I thought. But then you have Professor X, who is the most powerful mutant on the stage at this point. I'm not counting Phoenix because she isn't born yet, right?
Right.
So Professor X, like, he can just kill you with his brain, and he could kill a lot of people with his brain if he wanted, but he doesn't because he's got principles. Magneto could just massacre, he could just kill Professor X with his own wheelchair if he wanted, but he doesn't because they're friends. So it's kind of, I think it's refreshing to see characters acting true to their own nature. If you think about Electro from Spider-Man 2, does he really give a fuck what he does with his powers? No, not really. He's just going to destroy things.
And that was my biggest problem with Spider-Man 2. It's like these villains that we just saw become villains, for some reason have this strong hate for Spider-Man, and it didn't make any sense. These
Yeah, well, to be
characters
fair,
have history, so it makes more
yeah,
sense.
to be fair, they've had 6 other movies to build that.
I mean, correct, but it's not always like all or nothing. It's not completely black or white. There's a
No,
lot
you're
of,
right. Yeah, there's a lot of gray there.
yeah, it's not really like, oh, they completely hate each other. It's like, well, I hate you for a few reasons like this, but
In effect, this is a prequel, but I think it sidesteps a lot of the problems that plague prequels. That's a kind of a tongue twister. You have, like, for the actual Star Wars prequels, you have all these things, all these events happen that you're expecting to happen, that you already know the outcome to. And in this movie, I had no idea what was going to happen, and I was kind of unsure. There's that last battle scene. I was kind of nervous for some of the characters because I just thought, well, the rate they're going, they're changing so many things that it kept it exciting.
Right, and it's also, if you think about it, it's an eraser for anything bad they've ever done with the X-Men movies before this.
Like the entire third film.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, without being spoilery, they do change a lot, and it's pretty exciting to think that now they can just do whatever they want. They can recast all the characters just like Star Trek did. I think it's better than Star Trek. I think it's a lot more faithful to the source material than Star Trek. I'm not all too familiar with X-Men, but I know the gist, and I think the actors get it too, which is cool.
And I also think when it comes to these X-Men movies, at least this one did it well. There's a lot of things I think someone who's not really familiar with X-Men can jump into it, but they also do a lot of winks and nods, especially towards the end where like people kind of just come in for cameos. Or or there's a lot of dialogue that's alluding to other things happening, but it doesn't really take away from the movie. I mean, I didn't understand half of them, but it never like bothered me that I didn't. It didn't really affect the entire plot. Now, we talked about this during our Captain America review, and that was one that you weren't particularly happy about. You complained about these typical, very genre-oriented comic book movies where they're sticking to this formula and they're so tied down to the tropes that they've just created. Do you think this one is a typical comic book movie? Or do you think this...
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, it is derivative, don't get me wrong. We mentioned all the similarities. You have, like, the Terminator. Themes are pretty strong here.
It does have blockbuster elements. I mean, there are...
It's kind of like
scenes.
Inception in places, where Wolverine, basically, if something happens to him in the past, he might come back to the future, and that would undo everything he's done in the past. It's its own pretty butterfly or snowflake in that regard, but I think what it does really well, and it's not formulaic at all. Try and compare it to another superhero movie, it doesn't really work because there aren't clear-cut villains, and there are the good guys, but they struggle to maintain their compass.
Yeah. If I had one nitpick, there was a particular scene where it seemed like everybody's internal conflicts going on seemed to be very convenient that they showed up at that time.
Oh yeah, I mean there are a lot of contrivances in the plot, and I think there have to be. Like I mentioned with Professor X, that guy is so powerful. He can just basically undo the plot and fix everything himself. Like if he really wanted to, all those characters that do the wrong thing, he could just make them not.
Though they did have that set up well where he's having problems where he doesn't want to hear people's
Yeah,
thoughts,
yeah,
and
and
so he's
that
dulling
kind of made
himself.
sense. At the same time, I think Molly especially thought that that was just whiny. It's like, yeah, we'll just go out there and what's your problem, man? Like it might be hard, but you know this is important. We kind of need you to get your shit together
Right,
and help out. You know?
but I think it was an interesting parallel. I mean, it's obviously showing the parallel of people using drugs to dull their senses of the horrors that they've experienced. I actually like that about X-Men, that it does seem like, oh, it's completely out there, but it also is making social statements about things that have happened in our reality.
Yeah. Well, I think the message you have to look for a little bit because it's not really concerned with it.
No.
You know, like it is about the integration of minorities, but that is pretty far below the surface in this movie. It's really fast paced, and there's not a whole lot of breathing room.
Right, I think, did it not start out, it was about the integration of racial minorities?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so I think this
basically,
one, there's a scene where it's more about homosexuality, because there's a scene where it's in the very beginning, so this isn't really spoilers, where Peter Dinklage's character is trying to say, hey, there are these things out there, there are mutants out there, we need to stop them, and it seemed like, oh, like, you don't know who's a mutant or not, and I thought that was
well, man, that's pretty
so much.
timeless. You know, I think that the
Oh,
fear of people that are different, you know, that's always going to be a problem with humanity. So in that regard, X Men, I can see where it's gotten its legs. You know, it's been around for a long time.
so what would you give this?
Oh, I would say see it. Yeah, it's barring Guardians of the Galaxy being some kind of masterpiece, it's got to be the best superhero movie that comes out this year.
I would say need to see it, but it is a bit long, and you do
Really? Did you feel like it was long?
I mean, it's over 2 hours, and there was a point where I'm like, I kind of do feel the length. Now, I know that's not
Hmm.
really a bad thing that a movie's long, but
Well, there are so many plot lines. I didn't really,
right,
you
I
know
feel
what I
like,
mean? It's kind of like an episode of Game of Thrones in that regard.
but also, I mean, remember last time when I was down here, AMC theaters, man, 18 minutes of trailers, eight.
Oh, okay.
So like,
Well, if you go see it at a reasonable place,
yeah, I guess
get there late. Get there late, Alex.
I did. I showed up 5 minutes late. They still played 18 more minutes of trailers.
My God. Wow, that is crazy.
Yeah, and
You have a lot of
what's
people.
the crazy? You know what's the crazy thing? Right at the end, it says, "We know you love to watch trailers, so if you want to watch more, go
Oh,
online."
wow.
It's like, fuck you. You realize I've seen every trailer now. But whatever. So you know what? I'm gonna say need to see it. The best thing about
Need.
this movie, the best thing about this movie is when it comes to the action, when it comes to the resolution, it's not just like, say, Captain America, where it's like, well, we just have to destroy everything and that will solve the problem. This is not really a spoiler, but the resolution is the tension, the violence being subdued, being released. And I thought that was very mature for a comic book movie. Kind of
Yeah,
like
good point.
you remember at
Yes.
the end of Noah? It sort of has that kind of ending where it's like there's a lot of tension where you don't know what's going to happen, but you're thankful for the release of tension. And it's not really a breaking of tension where it's like, well, we beat the shit out of him, so we saved the day, and half of Metropolis, half of Washington, D.C. is currently on fire, falling down. I
Right, yeah.
really like that the action in this, the violence in this was smart, it's direct, it was well planned. It's not. The one thing you showed me that article about how comic book movie violence, all it is just people running into shit and nothing really coming of it. That was kind of a complaint I had with Godzilla, where Godzilla's destroying shit, he's having things happen to him, but it seems like nothing really happened to him other than, oh, he
There was
fell.
no consequence.
Yeah, there's no consequence. This one had a lot of consequence, but it was also smart about letting go the violence for a resolution. And
Yeah, good point, Alex. I hadn't even considered that. Except we won't get too deep into this, but what they're trying to do is avoid this act that will lead to public opinion of mutants, basically fear of mutants growing. And the way the climax transpires, you would think people would still be terrified of mutants.
Yes, I mean, it wasn't the perfect resolution. I mean, I think you see it in the trailer, Magneto does destroy a ballpark at one point. I mean, yeah,
a little bit.
But you know what? It was at least a little smart. I mean, think about it. Captain America, he just destroyed the helicarrier. I don't know how I was able to say.
The helicopter alligator, I think it's what you're going for.
Yeah, the big flying thing. It's like, well, instead of having millions of people die from it, we're just going to have a few thousand people die because that giant-ass
off-screen
boat just crashes in. Or say Superman, it's like, well, yeah, I can defeat my enemy, and I'm going to destroy most of Metropolis.
You mean Man of Steel, because the original Superman, that never happened.
Oh, yeah, because
it's all about him trying to avert that kind of shit, yeah.
I really like that. And another thing you brought up, too, the characters stay true to what the characters are. You never think that, hey, that character wouldn't do that. So it's very true to what people believe these characters are, how they've always been portrayed. But it also shows they are in conflict, and I think that's very important for comic book movies to have. Because if there is no internal conflict, it's kind of...
Well, there's no drama, right?
Yeah, there's no drama.
Yeah, that's the thing about Avengers. They get together, they hate each other, they fight for the basically it's fan service. Like, what would happen if Thor hit Captain America with his hammer? That kind of shit, But it didn't really feel genuine.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of felt like, well, we want to see Thor hit Captain America with his hammer, And in this movie, yeah, it is real drama that comes from the characters' interactions. Would you say this is better than Avengers, Alex? Yeah, take some time on that one.
I think I enjoyed it just as much as the Avengers. I like different things from them.
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of apples and oranges.
Avengers is a fun action comedy, really, at its heart. And this one, there's more drama. I mean, think about it. I think in Avengers, the only person that has true internal conflict is Iron Man. Am I right?
Yeah, that is true. Good point.
And this one, it's pretty much everybody except, say, Wolverine, because he's stubborn, frank, and impatient.
Well, yeah. I took Molly along, and she had seen the parts of number 1, the whole second movie, the third movie, and the reboot. Hadn't seen the 2 spin-offs of Wolverine, and she was up to speed. So I would say to enjoy Avengers and Days of Future Past, you basically have to sit through 3 or 4 movies. Before you can even watch this one.
I really think for this one, you have to at least watch X-Men Origins. Not X-Men Origins.
No. Do not watch X-Men Origins.
No. Do not. I apologize. Not that one. X-Men First Class. I think that's really the one you have to watch. You can watch the first 3, kind of. I mean, I've only seen part of X3.
Watch X3 though.
I've only seen. You could skip it. I mean, just you already know. Like, oh, there was a big battle. Whatever. People died. Doesn't matter because all of it's changed, man. They took a giant eraser to that. Just
basically
scraped it across. Question: did you stay for the credits?
I did not. I figured
I'm just gonna point this out. It was the longest credits I've ever seen in my life.
You mean the crawl was? It was slow?
Yeah. And at the very end, it pointed out, like, the making of this movie supplied, like, it was either 15,000 or 150,000. Now, granted, that's a big number, big jump there. Yeah, so I think it was sort of making a point, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know, because,
a lot of films do that, Alex.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a big conflict between special effects guys and the rest of the movie industry. Especially when, what was Ang Lee's movie with the tiger? Life of Pi.
Yeah.
Yeah, when that won a bunch of awards, a lot of the special effects guys were like, they were making comments every time they won an Oscar, like, oh, we don't get that much pride, or we don't get that much recognition around here. So I'm going to point out, if you're going to wait for the post-credits, you might as well just, I don't know, look it up on the internet, because that was very long as well.
Was there a stinger at the end?
There was a stinger. Because
was it worth staying for?
It was kind of cool. I have no idea who it was. But it's setting up the next movie. I think it's called X-Men Apocalypse.
So you know who it is now. It's Apocalypse, right?
Oh, is that the guy?
Yeah, there's a
Oh,
mutant named Apocalypse.
is he blue? Do you know?
Is he?
I don't know.
I don't think he's blue.
Spoiler alert, if you don't want to hear this, turn this off. But it was a blue guy, and
Was it Dr. Manhattan?
when you
Oh, they're fucked. They're
No,
so fucked.
I didn't see a giant blue penis just dangling.